Hello. Oops. Oh, now I gotta sneeze. Or do I? I don't know. Hey, Bardock! Hello everyone, welcome back to the stream where we play non-violent games, games that reward the player for intellectual and or emotional engagement rather than for combat or other kind of violent gameplay loops. Today we are back with The Great Ace Attorney 2, and we are continuing our case with Enoch Drebber. Stop this endless drivel about my life! What? Explain yourself, Mr. Drebber! Next Saturday. Yes! Oh, I hope so. Yes, I hope so. Yes. I hope we'll be there. That's next Saturday, so not this coming Saturday. Right? Because if it's this coming Saturday, there may be a conflict. I'm not sure. It's just gonna be a big weekend, that's all. This one. Okay, yeah, it's gonna be a big weekend. I'll see what I can do, though. I'll keep it in mind, and I'll see what I can do. I'll try and be there. That's what I can promise. I'll try and be there. I'll go, if you remind me, I'll go over my calendar after stream. Is it me, or is your hair curlier than usual? I don't know. I haven't looked at it in that context. I don't know. Kinda looks like you forgot to brush it. That's quite possible. I don't... Yeah. No, that's probably true. I don't brush it as much as I should. I'm not really one to worry about appearances. Like, physical appearances. It's just kind of not my priority at any point. I kind of wear what I'm comfortable with, and I don't know. It's just not a priority to me. Like, as long as I'm clean and I'm dressed, it feels like anything else, it's just like people are looking for something to judge. Fair enough. Anyways, shall we? Yes, it's true. I had to leave the university as a result of that article. But it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. What do you mean? Almost every student of science in the faculty was too poor to actually conduct any research. But they struggled on with their hypotheses anyway. We all did, only to have them taken by vultures. Sooner or later, you knew your ideas would be stolen and patented by some wretch or other after all. Good gracious! Making a name for yourself as a scientist in a climate like that was a miracle only a select few geniuses could ever hope to achieve. Personally, I wasn't one of those geniuses, so it was hardly a wrench. Being forced out of the university because of Logate was the best thing that could ever have happened to me.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you genuinely believe that? Of course I do. Who's better placed to know whether or not I possess a talent for science than me? I'm sorry to say that your words don't ring true at all. How dare you? And I have evidence to prove it. How are you in a position to say anything about me? I don't know you from Adam. funny because he's the only character who's actually just my regular voice. That's of course it's just a phrase. I guess it's a saying, you know. Shoot. Oh dear. It's attempting to reconnect. Is it? Okay, reconnection successful. I hope it doesn't keep doing that. It sort of disconnected for a few minutes. Yeah. It's been doing that a bit lately. Like, I was streaming on Tuesday, and it turned out it had just stopped connecting to the internet, like, 7 minutes in, and I was streaming for an hour before I noticed, and I had no audience, so no one could tell me. So, yeah. I'm hoping that doesn't keep happening. I'll have to figure that out. One way or another. Fine, if you think you have evidence, go ahead. Show it. What could you possibly have to disprove the idea that I was happy to leave university because I lacked talent? Take that! I'm here now, so if it happens, I can let you know. Thank you. Do you remember this, Mr. Drebber? We found it at your workshop. Is that a Royal Society trophy for excellence in science? What exactly is this trophy, Council? It's the greatest honor that can be bestowed on a young scientist, my lord. There is no higher accolade. The fact that they never once changed the sound effects from the original game shows how great they were despite originating from a freaking GBA. Or fucking GBA, or whatever. But yeah, yeah. There's a lot of, like, stuff in this game that almost feels weird because it's, like, so smooth. And like, there's just stuff that feels like, oh, this has stretched past what I expect of Ace Attorney. Technologically speaking. Like, the amount of people who can be on screen, and, like, it feels a little weird. Like, or like it being, like, really, like, properly 3D at times. Like, it just feels a little weird sometimes. Yeah, for sure. Because there was a real charm in it being kind of... Oh, yeah, go ahead. There is no higher accolade. Is that a Royal Society trophy for excellence in science? There is no higher accolade. It recognizes emerging talent and promises a bright future. Good gracious! Your prospects for the future were excellent, weren't they, Mr. Drebber? Because even then, you were a genius in your field. But you lost everything. You had no more future. Your talents would go to waste. All as a result of this one newspaper article. I don't know when you realized who Mr. Asmund was, but when it dawned on you that he was the same journalist who 10 years ago ruined your life, it's abundantly clear that you had no intention of forgiving the man. The truth is... Finally, he's going to fold. disconnected again. Okay, reconnection successful. At least it, you know, at least it's been reconnecting all right, which it hasn't been the other days, so that's something at least. Fine. Clearly, this has run its course now. What? I admit it. All of it. What was her voice? I admit it. All of it. What? What are you doing? It's exactly as the Japanese man said. I was coerced into going along with this man's plot to murder the victim, on the condition that he kept my dirty secret from 10 years ago. No. Good Lord! Dr. Scythe, do you realize what you're saying, woman? It's all true. That day, when I arrived at the Crystal Tower and saw the birdcage, my heart nearly stopped beating. That memory from a decade ago that I'd done my best to bury deep inside myself. It was the professor again, staring me in the face. And then, before I had a chance to react, I noticed something else. There was a note tucked inside the model's jacket. Dr. Scythe, you will go along with my plan. From someone who knows the truth about what really happened that night 10 years ago. All the instructions were there in the note. Every detail was meticulously written out. I had no choice but to do what it said. I made the necessary alterations to the scene and fabricated the autopsy report as instructed. There was really no other choice. It had to be done to protect the judiciary. I can only apologize now. Why on earth would you buckle now? Well, there's no point trying to hide it anymore, is there? I would have done anything to stop it coming out, even collaborate in a murder. But the great lie about that execution 10 years ago has been exposed. Whatever happens, I'm finished. So then, Mr. Drebber, what do you say to that? Your accomplice has admitted everything. Surely it goes without saying. You admit your part in it too, then? I admit nothing at all! What? What? Have you forgotten that the kinesis machine was ripped to shreds by an explosion? Short of me admitting to a crime, there's really no possible way for you to prove I did anything wrong. No! Order, order! Welcome back. And with a snack. Whatever this man says, I admit everything. He threatened to expose my secret, so I went along with his plan. Hello, Eva Grace 78. Welcome. It's good to have you here. Which type of game are you playing? I am playing The Great Ace Attorney 2. It's a visual novel with a bit of a puzzle element and a mystery stuff. Yeah, what Bardock said. Oh, Eva, by the way, just to make sure that I'm respecting you, are you willing to provide your pronouns? Want to make sure that I am not misgendering you. And Bardock, in terms of your question, she is a, well, she's a coroner. Do you know what a coroner is? She inspects all the dead bodies and stuff. Does autopsies and stuff. You know. Yeah. And she's also in charge of the forensic investigation team. And so, yeah, it is. But some people do it. It's a job that gets done. But, yeah, yep. Yep. That's, yep. It's a job, alright. It sure is. It's a job. But yeah, anyways, so she falsified a autopsy report because 10 years ago she buried one. She buried some information and stuff. Anyway, she had a whole secret thing, and then this guy, Enoch Drebber, knew the truth and threatened to expose it if she didn't falsify an autopsy report for this one. That's what she's admitting to right now. And Lord Van Zeeks. Yes. I hope you'll accept my apologies. What happens next is in your hands, of course. I have heard more than enough now. I hereby present the final findings of this court. This trial is not the proper forum in which to pursue the alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Drebber. The defendant is Professor Albert Harebrain. Very true. It had slipped my mind. Isn't he one of your closest friends? As the court has heard, Dr. Sight has admitted to the allegations brought by the defense, thereby absolving the defendant of any possible guilt. You mean? At the present time, it is the conclusion of this court that the defendant was not involved in any wrongdoing. Does the prosecution have any objection? None, my lord. Oh, congratulations, Miss Nardo! You've proven Professor Harebrain's innocence. Without further ado, then, the adjudication. Unless the prosecution or defense have any other matters to discuss. I don't know. This doesn't feel quite right. Why did Dr. Scythe suddenly admit to it like that? Is everything all right, Mr. Nada? Like you said before, the way the trial is set to end now, the judge will certainly deliver a verdict of not guilty. But is that really what we want? What the defense should be pushing for now is... Well, I could try this, but ultimately it's gonna be this. If the judge gives his verdict now, Professor Harebrained will be found not guilty, without any doubt. Is something troubling you, perhaps? Yes, but it's probably nothing. In the antechamber during the recess earlier, I did give Mr. Sholmes my word, though, didn't I? I told him I'd pursue any doubts I had about the truth to the absolute last. If you gave Mr. Sholmes your word, then it most certainly isn't nothing. And it means there's only one right answer here. Yes, you're right. I don't know why I was ever wavering.
Objection!
The defense objects to the trial ending at this time, my lord. I beg your pardon? We demand one final testimony. What? You do realize I'm about to adjudicate in favor of your client, I presume? What are you playing at now, my Nipponese friend? Why would you want to obstruct the conclusion of the trial at this point? No defense lawyer in his right mind would do that. Miss Nardo, what exactly are you thinking? The truth, the whole truth, and a way to bring it all out into the open. Right. Yes, in hindsight. Yes, one word of warning before I go. If, in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of a doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. Why are you getting Ace Attorney 2 flashbacks here? I don't know. Within what context? I'm sure Mr. Sholmes knew. He must have deduced that this would happen. Yes, I'm here in court to advocate for my client, and to secure an acquittal. Obviously. But that's not all. I believe that I have a duty to the court to pursue the whole truth of the case until every last detail is laid bare. Isn't there a case in the endgame of Ace Attorney 2 where getting a not guilty verdict would be a bad thing? Are you talking about the one where Maya's kidnapped? Right, so that's definitely very different here. Because we are pursuing a not guilty verdict. Like, legitimately, our client is not guilty, and we're trying to prove it. There, the client was guilty, but we had to pursue a not guilty verdict if we wanted Maya to not be killed. That was a fantastic case, by the way. It really, like, forced Phoenix to really, like, think, what is my duty as a lawyer? What is my duty as a person, as a friend? You know, it really challenged his integrity. It was really interesting. I loved that case so much, because it really is a fantastic, you know, way to challenge Phoenix. and get him to think about who he wants to be and how he wants to act. So, yeah. Anyways, and that is why the defense calls for further testimony from Dr. Scythe. Testimony from me? About what? About the nature of your collaboration with Mr. Enoch Drebber. Huh. In case it's escaped your attention, I've already admitted to everything I did. Yeah, as am I. It's a great case. The whole truth has already been revealed. So stop wasting everyone's time. Ah! As his lordship made very plain, your client will get the acquittal you wanted for him. There's simply no point protracting this business further with another tedious cross-examination.
Objection!
Pray forgive my careless handling of that hallowed bottle. I slipped. That's what you call it? What is your objection, Lord Van Zeeks? The prosecution also calls for supplementary testimony from the witness. Don't be stupid. If there is more to this case than has yet come to light, then I will join my learned friend in pursuing the facts until the bitter end. You're the what? Lord Van Zeeks. Oh, that is, like, far from the worst thing he's done with, you know, like, he has, like, thrown all sorts of stuff around, like, he's, you know, I mean, he at the very least hasn't thrown anything at anyone, which is more than I can say for most of the prosecutors in the original Ace Attorney trilogy. And several of the ones in the following games. This is most irregular, to say the least. However, as the prosecution also calls for it, I will uphold the request. Dr. Scythe, you will testify for the court, explaining the full extent of your involvement in the murder apparently committed by Mr. Drebber. Very well. Oh, damn it, I still forgot to... Oh, hold on. Chatbot timers. And we can turn off the one about the charity. Because that's over. Okay. You won't see that one again. Yep. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. Waxwork's plot. Let's see. It all began at the scene when I saw the waxwork and the note tucked inside its jacket. Yeah, agreed. It's so absurd. It's so absurd. It's just like, what if we took everything that makes anime ludicrous and then put it all in a courtroom? You know, like, the courtrooms are literally like they're like Dragon Ball Z battles, but like in a courtroom, you know? Like, they're absurd. You know, it's like, not quite Dragon Ball Z, but you know what I mean. Like, they're sort of like, all the absurdity and like the epicness is all like pushed into a single courtroom without any actual violence. It's just like, it's just a lot of fun. Whoever thought of that idea must have been drunk, but they sure as hell got a promotion. Maybe. Or maybe they were just like, this would be fun. Let's do it. The actual body of the victim, as indicated in the note's instructions, was beneath the experimentation stage. The body had yet to be arranged in certain ways to implicate the defendant, which was my job. I enlisted the help of the entire forensic investigation team to dress the scene appropriately. The truth about the execution 10 years ago is a state secret of the highest level. I had to protect it. So I was right. The stage and the machine were all specially designed for the deception. So it seems, and all meticulously prepared. You did well to see through it. You're a very shrewd boy. So kind of you to say. And what about this autopsy report, then? All I did was record the location of the body as being in the Crystal Tower instead of under the stage. That's all? That's a terrible corruption. Only my team were aware of the deceit, and then only under my explicit instructions. Nobody else at Scotland Yard knew anything about it, I assure you. Well, we must be thankful for small mercies, I suppose. Well, I believe that testimony has clarified everything. There's no particular need for cross-examination, I would say. No, I disagree. I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Just look at that expression on Dr. Sykes' face. It's the defense's right to cross-examine any witness following testimony. What is it about you Japanese that makes you all so doggedly persistent? Very well. If you so desire, counsel, proceed with the cross-examination. Yes, my lord. From what you described before, it sounds like the note was anonymous. Did you have any idea of who was behind it? There are very few people in the know about what really happened 10 years ago to start with. But anyway, I'd never heard of this engineer. So no, I had no idea. Yet despite not knowing who was behind the plan, you went along with it? All good, Bardock? I had no choice. Protecting the professor's secret was my only concern. But the horse is bolted now, and the stable door will never shut again. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Bardock. Scotland Yard's reputation will be immeasurably damaged as a result of all this. Yes, thank you, Lord Benzies. I'm well aware of that. So, as I understand it, what you found in the birdcage was the waxwork model. Where, then, was the victim's body? Just done with it. Oh, so sorry to hear that. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get something wrong so that I can get the the sort of the things back. Actually, no. I know after 3 years of this and taking medications that don't do anything long term, my mom decides to actively think, hey, maybe I should take my son to the doctor. Oh, jeez, 3 years? That's why would you wait 3 years for that? That's absurd. I am so sorry to hear that. That really sucks. expanding the chat thing a little bit. It's always been a little small. Hard to read in the corner, so... Anyways, so you knew about the special construction of the stage used to carry out the trick, then? It was quite obvious what had happened with the victim in the waxwork. And you switched the two over, didn't you? In other words, you recorded the victim's body as having been discovered in the Crystal Tower. And the waxwork? I wrapped it and sent it by carriage to the specified address at the specific time. Good thing I love apples, because there's somehow a good counter to my throat. Sorry, that's a little rant just for us. Yeah, I get it. And, fair enough. I am glad you love apples. That's a very convenient thing. And why were you given such directions? Presumably so it would be recovered by Drebber and returned to Madame Tuspel's. I see. And then you put the bird cage back on the experimentation stage? Yes. Although someone obviously made a mistake about which cage should go where. I thought I'd made it perfectly clear to the team, but still. I suppose you were focused on the victim's body, that being a more important detail. When you say arranged, I presume you mean with this. Yes. The instructions in the engineer's note said something along the lines of... Fabricate some evidence to make it clear that hairbrain alone could have killed Asmund. So, you mean that was your doing? I fetched Hairbrain's ridiculous screwdriver from the stage, and took it with me alone to the abyss under the stage where the birdcage had fallen. Alone, Doctor? I didn't feel it would be appropriate to involve anybody else in that particular part of the deception. There was a void under the stage where I found the birdcage lying in the dead. I approached it, leaned down and slowly opened it up. Then I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest. And then you noted that in your fake autopsy report as a fictitious cause of death. Exactly. So, the actual cause of death was... trauma resulting from the 30-foot drop. My word! What is it, Mr. Sato? Something about Dr. Sai's last statement is playing on my mind, that's all. Yes, mine too. Dr. Scythe! There's really no need to shout. I can hear you perfectly well. The defense calls for you to add what you just said to your formal testimony. Oh? Which part? What I wanted to supplement her testimony with is... I'm gonna say the real cause of death, I think. The real cause of death being the fall of 30 feet. That part. Fine, if that's what you want. Just stop yelling, please. The prosecution concurs. Very well, you will supplement your testimony now, witness. If you wish, my lord. You know who she looks like? She looks like Salem. She looks a lot like Salem. Even her hair is similar. Not quite, but like a little bit. You know, in terms of how it's like styled, the things in the back, they kind of look like... Yeah, anyways. And even her color palette. Like, not just her face, but, like, her clothes. The color palette is a little Salem-y. Anyways, I just thought that was funny. Maybe Salem just, like, hopped over the Ace Attorney universe for a little bit, and then just, like... was like, listen, I'm bored, and I want to be a coroner for a bit. And then this all happened, and then she's like, you know what, I'm gonna go back and be a goddess of darkness again. I don't know. It's not a particularly funny joke, but anyways. You're quite sure of that? It was as a result of a broken neck. Yes. As a professional, that was more than apparent. You'd never know just by looking at the photograph of the victim, though, would you? No, that's very true. Obviously not. Which is precisely why coroners are needed to determine the actual facts. Yes, assuming they can be trusted. There's no point calling her assessment into question without evidence. Let's get back to the testimony. Very well. The entire team? In perverting the course of justice? My team consists of the very best investigators there are. I demand loyalty from all members. We operate on a code of chivalry of sorts. You aid and abet a murderer, commit perjury, and dare to talk of chivalry? It was a matter of priorities. What? Nothing was more important than protecting the secret of the professor. My team did what was necessary without losing sight of the primary goal. I consider their conduct exemplary. Don't concede the point, Miss Nato. You mustn't let her win. I need a lawyer. I'll take that silence as tacit acceptance. Now, can we move on? But at what cost? Faith in Scotland Yard is going to suffer a terrible blow as a result of this. And your precious secret is out now, anyway. Yes, as you say, I take full responsibility. Blow me down, Dr. Scythe. Surely there was some other way you could have protected the secret. No, there really wasn't. I've done my utmost, believe me. In many ways, I respect your determination. Whew, I nearly froze under that cold stare as she said that. I do believe she was being genuine though, Miss Nardo. So, that's her story. She's admitted everything and revealed her full involvement in the crime. I do wonder if there really could be much more to it. Well, I don't know, but I just have a feeling. Do you, Miss Nardo? The truth is, I find it strange too. How those two are reacting to this in completely opposite ways, I mean. Yes, exactly. For some reason, I feel sure they're still trying to hide something. Nope, never mind. That last statement was the idiot task to explain that somehow it's the other way around. Yep, oops. Thank you, counsel, that will do. But my lord, wait! The defense is still in the process of establishing its argument. No further analysis is necessary, I feel. As such, I shall be requesting the final decisions of the members of the jury. It's been an honor to serve, my lord, and we know exactly what we think now.
Guilty. 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 Guilty.
Okay, it's actually, like, pretty funny, like, in a sort of twisted kind of way, that they apparently appear to be so pissed off with me that that they aren't even listening to the fact that Scythe is still continuing to admit guilt, and that Dr. Hairbrain is actually innocent. I know this is just how they have to do a game over, but that's the only way this makes sense. I applaud the jurors for doing their civic duty and for finding a swift resolution to this matter. That is all. Court is adjourned. How you stabbed Mr. Osmond in the chest. That part. Fine, if that's what you want. But there's really no need to point. The prosecution concurs, he says, pointing. Very well, you will supplement your testimony now, witness. If you wish, my lord. I stood over the victim's corpse where it lay in the toppled cage and plunged the screwdriver into the chest. So it was you who stabbed Mr. Osmond with this? Yes, far easier than dissection, I assure you. No precision required. What a welcome change. The victim died instantly from a snapped neck. All I did was carry out the instructions I'd been given. As unflinchingly as ever, no doubt. I imagine you didn't bat an eyelid when you drove the weapon into his body. There was no need to bat my eyelids. And what else did you do to twist the facts? Remind the court, why don't you? If you wish. me what you did with this, correct? I was merely carrying out the engineer's instructions. In his words, fabricate some evidence to make it clear that Hairbrain alone could have killed Asmon. And so you went without any of your team to where Asmon had fallen. That's right, yes. I leaned down over the bird cage and opened it up. Then I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest. After that, it was simply a matter of recording the stab wound as the cause of death on the autopsy report. The real cause of death being the fall, of course. Sure, there's something here in this testimony. You know, if you think it would be appropriate, I'm sure you could ask Dr. Scythe to change the supplementary testimony she gave before. What should I ask her to do with the statement she added? No, I meant to... I don't think there's any need to ask her to change it, but I wanted to change it, actually. Of course, I'm sure you're right.
Hold it!
It's disconnected again. Let's give it a minute to reconnect. There we go. Dr. Scythe, what you said before about the real cause of death, I believe that may be significant, so could you change your supplementary statement to explain that instead? Very well.
Hold it!
Oh, okay, so that's gonna be the same no matter what, I guess. Oops. Apologies, everyone. Vertebrae. Wait, no. Shoot. That's what you said before about what you did to the victim's body. I believe that would be significant, so could you change your supplementary statement to explain that instead? Very well. Okay, let's switch it back one more time. I'm sorry, everyone. it's easy to click the wrong thing here. I want to try something. But I'm going to save first, because I don't think it's right, but I'm going to try it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this isn't it, but... Nope, that's what I thought. So... Oh! Okay, I have an idea. We have to switch back to the other one, though. I don't love that we have to do this every single time. But... Yes, okay. I've got a nasty feeling that this inconsistency points to an extremely uncomfortable truth. What on earth is the matter, Council? Have you lost your tongue? I apologize, my lord. Dr. Scythe, in that last statement of yours, there's just one point that seems to defy explanation. Out with it, my learned friend. Yeah, it's a really great, really great choice that really, you know, it conveys something very quickly that gives you a sense of yes, you know? It's a real, like, it's a moment that is like a, it just really conveys you got it right, you know? And it's a good feeling. You know, and, yeah, you know, like I told you, like, really, like, sort of thinking on things and you know, all this stuff, like, it's really good for frustration tolerance to really, like, slow down and think on what are the different parts of this, how do these fit together, you know? Because you can't just, you know, you can't just run ahead in this stuff. You need to think about it. You need to slow down, breathe, and think about it, you know? Although it is funny, because I'd imagine that you have to do something similar with Fire Emblem, you know, concerning the strategy stuff, but I guess maybe not. Yeah, I guess when I was playing, I didn't have to do that, even though it would probably help a lot to do more strategy stuff when I play it. But, yeah. Anyways, just a thought. Just some ramblings, I guess. There's an obvious inconsistency between your description and this photograph. Maybe it'd be difficult to implement it? Implement what exactly? Sorry, I rambled a bit and now I don't know which part of it you're referring to. Which shows the victim in the birdcage following the events of his death. The court has already examined that photograph in depth. There's nothing new we can learn from it. Yes, we have already considered it, that's true. But we now know the facts to be different. What do you mean? Oh, no. With Fire Emblem, I was talking about how it needs you to think and breathe and like strategize and like think, okay, like how do I how do I solve this problem? I wasn't talking about the music thing. I was talking about building frustration tolerance. I believe we should let the defense explain. Well, in this photograph would we see the alleged inconsistency with the witness's statement. Oh, it's one of the weaker titles. Got it. So because of poor map design and rather frustrating enemy placement. What that makes no sense is the one being made at this very moment by your index finger. Huh? Your roving eyes and wavering hand undermine the bolded words you started with. And if you're looking for something that makes no sense, you're pointing the wrong way. Apparently, the victim was lying dead in the birdcage when Dr. Sai stabbed him in the chest. That was the essence of her testimony. I know, and hearing that is when I thought, got it. But then somehow I lost my train of thought at the last moment, and it turned into a... not it. Don't worry, Miss Nardo. I'm sure if you try again, it will turn back into a got it. I believe we should let the defense explain. Where in this photograph would we see the evidence? So, I was under the impression that the conflict was that there was glass, which meant... interesting. Anyways, I thought it was that the glass was there, but, let's take a look then. He's lying dead in the birdcage. Lying dead in the birdcage when... through the chest. Maybe? Yes, okay, I was right. Good. Look closely at the bloodstain on the victim's chest. It clearly extends in a downwards direction, toward the man's feet. I thought so. Okay. And why is that significant, Counsel? Well, if the victim was stabbed moments before the kinesis machine was set in motion, that's entirely expected. Other games that do strategizing well, but fall off because of one factor or another. Worst case being Thracia 776? I've never heard of that one. Ah, of course, no, that's not what happened. Exactly, my lord. Dr. Scythe made it very clear in her testimony just now that the point at which she stole Professor Hairbrain's screwdriver and stabbed the victim was after the grand deception was set in motion, when the birdcage had fallen below the stage out of sight. From the shape of it, it's clear that the birdcage would have fallen on its side after the 30-foot drop, and if the victim had really been stabbed whilst inside the birdcage in that position, the blood from the wound would have spread out equally in all directions. For it to have formed the longitudinal appearance we see in the picture is inconceivable. Cool. Very cool. Given that the victim's blood seeped vertically downwards from the wound, it must be the case that when you stabbed Mr. Asmund, he was standing up. You pronounced Thracius 776 right on your first try, too. Good job. Ah, okay, cool. In short, Dr. Scythe, your latest testimony was a total fabrication. I knew it. I was right. Now I've identified that contradiction. There's only one way to explain the facts. We've all been under a great misapprehension here. What? What sort of misapprehension? Dr. Scythe, you claim you were coerced into helping Mr. Drebber as a result of the note he left in the waxwork. You claim that you made changes to the scene of the crime to implicate the defendant. And you claim that you authored a fake autopsy report to cover your tracks. But one of those claims is an out-and-out lie. It's going to ask me which one, so I'm just going to save. Because the question of what the bloodstain really tells us has only one possible answer. If that is the case, what is it, man? Counsel, you've clearly struck upon a revelation. Now tell the court what it is. Which part of Dr. Scythe's story is shown to be a lie by the contradiction in her testimony? And presumably the stabbing of the victim. The answer is very simple if you consider the sequence of events. If, when the victim was stabbed, the blood from the wound seeped downwards as it did, we can be sure that the victim must have been either sitting or standing upright at the time. But as you rightly pointed out, the birdcage would have fallen on its side when it fell beneath the stage. Yes, it would, which tells us that the victim must have been in that position of his own accord. That's impossible. The man was dead, remember? No, that is the misapprehension. When the birdcage fell from the stage into the void below, it must have hit the ground with considerable force. But Mr. Asmund didn't die in the fall. He probably lost consciousness for a while, but when he came round, he got to his feet to climb out of the cage. Just as Dr. Scythe appeared. If the victim was in fact alive at that point in time, it changes everything. Here comes another problem. This game is I was switching armies. Oh. Huh. Ah! Mr. Odie Asmund's killer wasn't the defendant, Professor Albert Harebrain, nor was it the mastermind behind the stage trickery, Mr. Enoch Drebber. It was you, Dr. Courtney Scythe. Order! Can this possibly be true? Have you been taking me for a fool? It was you, was it? You killed him. You hoped that by admitting to being an accomplice in Mr. Drebber's scheme, the trial would end, before you were accused of a far worse crime. Cold-blooded murder. Oh, do shut up. You're so desperate now you're making all this up. As if I would do something like that. I assure you that the defense is not desperate, Doctor. Miss Nardo has established the facts using evidence and logic alone. Ha! Logic. Don't make me laugh. Sadly, your logic is a gaping hole in it. What do you mean? I'd have thought it was obvious. A motive, boy. You're lacking a motive. What possible reason would I have to kill Mr. Asman? Asman was involved in any number of criminal activities, from coercion to theft to murder. There is no known connection to Dr. Scythe there. I'm rather relieved to say it does seem somewhat far-fetched. True, there's no obvious motive, but there's still something in the back of my mind. I feel sure I've seen something somewhere that hints at why the coroner might have done this. Regardless, the point I was trying to make is that it is good to have games that teach us frustration tolerance and teach us to pause and breathe and think, because there is not enough of that in the world these days. Yes, I might have tampered with the crime scene, concocted a fake report. But murdering someone for no reason is a very different story. No, when you questioned what possible reason what you could have for wanting to kill it, Mr. Asman, something did come to mind. Anyways, I just anyone who has a bit of a, well, basically, anyone kind of like you, Bardock, who struggles to just slow down sometimes. Frustration tolerance games. 100%. Don't go for the instant gratification ones. Use the ones that make you think. I mean, obviously, have fun with the other ones too, but I'm just saying, they're so good for you. It's, really underrated. They're really underrated to have games that make you think. What? What was it, Council? Enlighten the court at once. But, certainly, doubly so in an age where, not even just people who struggle with, you, just anyone who's just on the internet, where people are constantly looking to get under your skin. It's not perfect, but it really helps to have the ability to think a little harder when you see something. Yes, we saw it yesterday, didn't we? Something that seemed strange, but we had no reason to suspect it at the time. As a particular object that explains why Dr. Scythe would have wanted to kill Mr. Asman. I'm gonna go with the Iron Mask. It's the Iron Mask. You've lost me. Huh? Sorry, Miss Nardo, but why the Iron Mask? Well, of all the things I saw yesterday, it left the greatest impression, so... Okay, yeah, I was wrong. Clearly, you have no idea what you're talking about. I think I must have said the wrong thing. Forgive the interruption, Dr. Scythe, but what my colleague meant to say was scalpels. Perhaps that makes a little more sense to you? Ah, of course. Did you say scalpels? It would appear that word has struck a chord, Doctor. You... Come on, out with it. It was yesterday, when we visited your laboratory. this big thick book here? Oh, it appears to be an accounting ledger. It's a record of the forensic investigation team's spending, I think. Oh? What is it? It's clear that the team purchases various equipment and supplies on a monthly basis, but... well, one entry seems rather strange. Really? In what way? They're buying 500 scalpels every month. Oh, I had completely forgotten about that. $500 scalpels a month? At first, I wondered what on earth you could be using that many scalpels for. But actually, I realize now it's not the scalpels themselves that are significant. It's the money for them, disappearing every month from the department's accounts. Asmund's criminal organization relied heavily on extortion for its funding. Tracing the money from the forensic investigation team's account to find out where it was going would be extremely straightforward. 10 years ago, when Mr. Asmund was still a journalist and wrote this article about Mr. Drebber, he may well have stumbled upon information as he was researching the story. Information relating to Dr. Zeiss' darkest secret that he would use to rack money from her for the next decade. Her darkest secret? Good lord, you mean... I don't know what happened on the night of that execution 10 years ago, but clearly the opportunity to rid yourself of that menace was too tempting to pass up. So in the end, you weren't coerced at all, were you? You did it entirely of your own free will. You stabbed Mr. Asmund in the heart with all your might, to silence the blackmailer who knew your dark secret forever. You'll never understand. None of you. What we've had to keep covered up all these long years. As very little of the machine remains after it was ripped apart by the bomb, the truth of this case can never be properly established unless you speak out. And if you decide not to, it's very possible that Courtney Scythe will escape punishment for her crimes. Please, sir, own up to what you've done and tell the court the truth about what happened. 10 years ago, you told the truth, and you were robbed of a bright and successful future as a result. I can certainly understand your bitterness and your consternation now. However, this is surely the chance you've been waiting for, to sever the hold that fate's had over you all these years. Super high voltage, instantaneous kinesis. I mean, really. It's the addle-brained mock scientists that are the worst, you know. They don't recognize the fact that they don't have talent. They can't even get that right. And so they end up chasing impossible dreams, having unbridled faith in their abilities. They go on and on about their wonderful hypotheses, their stupid eyes shining like a little child's. They make me sick. I can't abide their foolishness. Careful, Mr. Drebber. I was particularly pleased with the kinesis machine. It made for quite a show, didn't it? So you admit it? You admit that it was nothing more than a sham made for the purpose of killing the victim? Yes, I admit it. I did it all, in the name of revenge. Revenge for the future that Mr. Asmund's article had deprived you of 10 years earlier. But the revenge you sought didn't stop at Asmund, did it? which is where that very particular waxwork comes in. Yes, I see. The condemned convict that Sue saw rising from the grave in Lowgate Cemetery 10 years ago. If your account of those events was all true, then obviously Scotland Yard couldn't afford to acknowledge what had happened. Even if it meant discrediting a bright young man and crushing any future career he might have had. So your plan required that you abduct that particular waxwork model in order to exact your revenge on Scotland Yard as well. Or on Dr. Scythe, to be precise. It was a year ago. By some extraordinary twist of fate, Asbin turned up at my workshop. He didn't remember who I was, of course. He just wanted to employ my services as an engineer. And he happened to have a paper with him. An article on the front page caught my eye. About the coroner who'd handled that bogus autopsy being appointed head of a new forensic team. When I learned that news, my cognitive processes started to devise the plan. What a horrid tale. He robbed me of my future, so I wanted to use the man's own wiles against him for revenge. And have that rotten Scotland Yard eating out of my hand at the same time. I wanted them all to suffer the same humiliation I'd had to suffer. Your actions against those who ruined your future were justified as revenge, at least to yourself. Certainly, no one has the right to destroy another's prospects, especially for purely selfish gain. And yet, in carrying out your plan, you did exactly that to someone else, didn't you? Did I? Professor Harebrain's only crime was passion for his hypothesis, but you had no compunction about sacrificing his future to effect your revenge. You knew that he would be forever branded a failure and a fraud. Oh, and it disconnected again. Oh, you but you but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry. Come on, buddy. Reconnect. Reconnect, my friend. Reconnect for me. Reconnect for me. Hey! Reconnection! Okay. Perhaps life treated you unfairly 10 years ago, and others' misconduct left your life in tatters. But remember this. Your own actions resulted in exactly the same thing for another perfectly innocent young man. Hi. Lord Van Zeeks, what of Dr. Scythe? An immediate warrant for her arrest has been granted, and she's been remanded in custody, my lord. I presume she will face trial in the coming days, along with Mr. Drebber. A most regrettable situation indeed. She's made great contributions to her profession over the years. It really is a hard truth to swallow. However, that is a topic for some future occasion. For now, Professor Halbrain. Oh, yes. It seems there was a great deal more to your experiment than you realized. However, I think we can assume now that all the sordid details have been brought to light. This has been a very long and profound trial, but I'm pleased to say... Trial actually mean a beheading. Well, I mean, so, it depends? It's not entirely clear, actually. Like, there clearly are executions in this, like, there is the death penalty in this world, but it's not entirely clear when it applies. Also, it's Van Zeeks, it's not Van. Like, his name is Barak Van Zeeks. Van Zeeks is his last name. Just so you know. Also, I don't think it's a beheading. It's a hanging, if anything, but not a beheading. I think. This has been a very long and profound trial, but I'm pleased to say you are absolved of all guilt. This whole experience has taught me a very great but painful lesson. Just assumed it was Van. Yeah, because his name was separated. Yeah, well, nope. Last name is Van Zeeks. Which is two, you know. I know it. That is a huge generalization. Also, this is in England. So, just maybe don't make generalizations about a whole country being, like, particularly, like, brutal or something like that. It gets a little close to racism. More comfortable than I am, at least. You know, to just be like, oh, this whole other country loves hanging people without warning is like, whoo boy. But no, I mean, in game, I don't like. I think they have said they hung people, not behead them. So like, I literally, like, literally know it's hanging if it's anything, because they have not confirmed. They have never mentioned beheading, but I think they have mentioned hanging. So like, I'm just saying, like, you don't so I don't know, like, I don't know, Bardock. I don't feel comfortable with this, okay? I don't feel comfortable with this. I've never heard anything of that sort, and I I don't know. That seems like just a huge thing, and I don't want to just... I don't feel comfortable with that. Okay? Alright. Me, this dedicated scientist, this devotee of natural philosophy. I've been selfish and self-centered, and above all, a fool. Professor. I've spent my life thinking of nothing but my research, misguidedly believing that I could do whatever I set my mind to despite my lack of talent. And the worst of it is, in the process I've caused others pain and misery. Others who are far, far greater people than I. No, Professor. That's not true. What? Don't tar yourself with the same brush as Drebber. What happened was his doing and his alone. This outcome is his fate, not yours. You're not to blame in any way. Lord Van Zeeks. And the derision with which he referred to you earlier, calling you a fool, talentless even. He got better. Like, he was better after that. Like, we told him that that was a problem, and he was able to get better. And be more helpful, or at least less not helpful. He didn't sabotage it again, is the point. The man has no idea. To believe in yourself and work your fingers to the bone to realize your dreams, that's laudable, not laughable. No one has the right to deride another for such choices. Oh. Thank you, Barak. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Yes, my lord. It is this court's expectation that you will find... It is this court's expectation that you find the defendant not guilty of the charge of which he stands accused. I presume there are no objections. None from me, my lord. Certainly not. This trial has really made me think, but this is the right decision. It's all been proven methodically and rigorously. I have no misgivings whatsoever. What's that? He's done, is he? He's all over. I don't know what's become of the yard these days. I don't recognise the place. Is it me, or is Van Zeek's hair graying out a bit? I mean, it's been grey for a while. It's been his hair has always been grey. So, how many corns does that kid have? Apparently an infinite amount. Very well. In that case, I hereby pronounce the defendant not guilty. Court is adjourned. It's over. That was some trial. "24th of October, 4:33 p.m. The Old Bailey, defendant's antechamber. Professor, what a splendid outcome, isn't it? Oh, it is, it is. Congratulations, Professor Hairbrain. Mr. Otto, Mr. Sato, I am truly, truly beside myself with gratitude. How could I ever thank you enough? I'm just glad it's all been cleared up, that you realize you were just caught up in a bad situation. So, what year do these two prequel games take place exactly? I don't know. It's the 1800s. Probably the late 1800s, I think. But you might want to look it up. think it's the 1800s. I might also be completely wrong. Yeah, go check. Right now, you know, if I had that research grant money, I'd give the whole lot to you, every penny. Well, that's very kind, but I'm just a student, so... We don't need any financial reward. Your acquittal is more than enough. Oh dear, oh, what can I do? Taking place near the end of the 19th century and the dawn of the 20th century, in Britain as the Victorian era. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, well, he was actually not a law student at the beginning of all this. Which you can find that on my YouTube channel. Go back to the very beginning if you want. It's a ways back. Oh dear. Oh, what can I do? How about this? As a memento, this paper is the paper about my hypothesis is inside. Well, just as a memento then. Thank you. I've been wondering, Professor. What are you going to do now? Forgot to mention this, Adam. What? Oh my, yes, what am I going to do? I'm thinking of getting Sonic Frontiers with my next paycheck, alongside a new phone. Ooh, that's exciting. There's 2 games coming out this month that I'm excited for, personally. Well, one is technically DLC, but it's going to be a big DLC, which is the DLC for Horizon Forbidden West. It's like an expansion thing. And then the other one is the new Star Wars Jedi Survivor game, which I'm excited for. It's the only Star Wars thing I'm excited for right now, honestly. Star Wars has lost me a bit. Well, I guess I'm a little excited for Visions Season 2, but not, like, a lot. I really like the first one, but, like... Oh, yeah, I really like it. Gameplay-wise, there's some ups and downs, but it's generally pretty good. There's, like, almost too much to do in the second one, if I'm being completely honest. But overall, it's still pretty solid. What I really like about it is the story. You know me. I'm all in it for the story. My hypothesis and my great machine lie in ruins. But still, it's been too long since I was last in London, so perhaps we'll enjoy some sightseeing. I must explore the Great Exhibition whilst I'm here too, and see if no inspiration hits me. Oh yes, that's a wonderful idea. I can't allow... Who's this? I can't allow that. Lord Van Zeeks, what are you doing in here? Barrack! I'm sorry you had to go through that, Halbert. Well, if I'm honest, it was terrifying. You were like a great demon behind your bench there, snarling down on your prey. What's written on the doctor's name tag? It definitely doesn't look to be his name. I don't know. You're one of the few true friends I have. I couldn't leave it to anybody else to handle the prosecution or the defense. Sorry? Or the defense? Did I just hear that right? I always knew that you had my best interests at heart. Don't worry. Oh, how about you show me around while I'm here in town? It's been a long time since we left university. We have a lot to catch up on. Listen, Albert. In a few days, your acquittal will be made official. When that happens, you must head straight to Dover. I'll accompany you. What? From there, you'll cross the channel and make your way back to Germany. I've already purchased the tickets. But no! Hold on a minute, Bark. What about the Great Exhibition? This is the chance of a lifetime for me. I want to look around. No. No sightseeing, Albert. Give up on the idea. Sometimes it's hard to see any warmth in those eyes, Beric. Lord Van Zeeks. What's all this about? A necessary precaution. Yes, I think I understand. You do? Well, Iris told me that when you met Lord Van Zeeks at his office some days ago, he asked how Mr. Natsume was doing. Yes, that's right. I remember being surprised at the time and thinking it was nice of him to ask. The point is, Mr. Natsume is still alive and well, even though it's been more than 6 months now since he stood trial with the Reaper as the prosecutor. Ah, you mean the Reaper's influence doesn't stretch overseas? Those in the Reaper's sights meet their ends days or sometimes months after their acquittal. That's been the pattern up to now. But of course we know that both Mr. Natsume and Gina were completely innocent. True. And perhaps that governs the Reaper's actions. The truly innocent are spared. But I don't want to take any chances with a close personal friend. But Barak, like the mustache-nipping he is, this man should leave the country without delay. That's why I'm packing him off to Germany at once. Right. Does your friend-shaped package get any say in it? Goodness, was this your intention all along, Lord Van Zeeks? Oops. In court, where people think of him as the Reaper, this man seems absolutely merciless, and yet, sometimes I feel as though I don't understand him at all. It's time to go, Albert. Back to the prison for the time being. Ah, yes, all right. Well then, Miss Otto. Thank you so much for everything. Not at all, Professor. It was a pleasure getting to know you. It's gonna sound rather bold, but is it bad to say that these models aren't well colored? Like, the colors are rather saturated and don't pop off as well as they did in the 2D games. Maybe? I don't know. I think they're pretty fine, all things considered, you know? I love the initial stuff. Like, the original, you know, especially, you know, in its updated forms, right? With you know, like on the DS and on the Switch and stuff, where they updated the stuff to make it look really sharp. Like, it's really good, but I think this is fine, all things considered. Well, once the dust is settled, you must come and visit me on Germany. Anyway, goodbye for now. I'll tell you what, though, it's definitely better. It's definitely better than the 3DS games. It's much better. And I'm even one of the people who doesn't hate those. But this looks much better than the 3DS games, the models in those. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think that just comparing this and the original stuff, it's just like, it's kind of apples and oranges almost, at least in terms of like in terms of like the coloring and stuff, just because like, transition from 2D to 3D is, like, it's just a lot. Like, a lot of different stuff to consider. It's hard to... I don't know. I guess I'm just... Oh, there we go again. Disconnected. There we go. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that criticism. It just feels like there's so many other things. Like, there's so many different things to consider between the 2D sprites and the 3D models. Like, I think, you know, yeah, I'm just mixed. That's all. Now, my Nipponese friend. Oh, yes, sorry, I thought you'd gone too. We have matters to discuss. Can you spare me some time? You, want to talk with me? I'll be waiting in the courtroom in 10 minutes. Well, that was strange. For some reason, I didn't get that sense of impending doom as he walked away this time. The Enigma, Barak Van Zeeks. What does he want to discuss, I wonder? The answer awaits in the courtroom, I suppose. Here goes, then. Are we even allowed to go there when trials aren't in section? Session, you mean? Apparently, or at least he is. Which makes sense. The prosecution always gets preferential treatment in Ace Attorney games. 24th of October, 4:58 p.m., the Old Bailey courtroom. So, are you satisfied? You saved a guileless I don't know how to... Guileless. I'm gonna go with guileless. Scientist from great injustice. Yes. I think so. Pretty sure we shouldn't be allowed to go in there unless a trial is up. Yeah, well, here we are anyway, so, you know. If they don't want us here, come get us, I guess. Also, yeah, prosecutors are cheaters. Yeah, all the cool stuff. Well, I mean, just because it's unfair doesn't mean they're cheaters. That's part of the problem. I'm relieved, at least, that the man's innocence could be proven. Anyway, I imagine you have been wondering where my animosity towards you Nipponese comes from. Well, at first I thought you just didn't like me. I imagined you saw me as a pretentious child from an unimportant land who had no business being here. But now I think differently. Where did he get... Yeah, well... You clearly know our ways, so I would guess that some specific incident led to your thorough dislike of my race. Will you tell me what happened, please? The Professor. I thought I'd never hear that name in this courtroom again, to be honest. He took your brother's life. Clint. My brother was Clint Van Zeeks. 16 years ago, when I was still just in my teens. He was already the director of prosecutions and a key member of the judiciary. I looked up to him. He was everything I aspired to be. He was involved in the establishment of justice systems in foreign countries as well. There were exchange programs between Britain and other nations then, too, to share knowledge and ideas. As part of one of those programs, 3 judicial students came to Britain from your homeland, the Empire of Japan. Who's that masked person next to Van Zeeks? Ah, another disconnection. It's... Oy boy. There we go. So yeah, they're Van Zeek's assistant. And there's they also might be Kazuma. But Kazuma with amnesia. Do you know who Kazuma is? Were you here for any of that? Or, not assistant, sorry, apprentice. Oh, if it was 16 years ago, then one of them could have been my father. Of course, I remember Dr. Mika. Of course. What are your... I don't think I... So, Kazuma is actually the guy who brought our heroes to Japan in the first place. But we thought he was dead. He is not, apparently. He is the best friend of Naruto. Yeah. And yeah. Rinosuke and Susato, yeah. Yeah, that's him. Yep, that's him. I don't know why sometimes I forget that his first name is Rinosuke. And I just remember Naruto. Like, I don't know why I do that sometimes, but it happens now and then. Anyways, I haven't played the Miles Edgeworth duology, actually. Anyways, yeah, so this is potentially him. But amnesiac. Of course, I remember Dr. Mikatoba well. I had no idea. What do you mean? What's Japanese? Oh yeah. Yeah, it's... I'm not exactly sure how all that works. I'll be honest. But I just forgot his first name. It has nothing to do with that. I was a minor at the time, training at the prosecutor's office. One day, Clint introduced me to the 3 visiting Nipponese. So, you've actually met my father. He and his colleagues were polite and amicable. They were adept at their work and exacting in their standards. It was my first encounter with the Nipponese spirit, and it made a very great impression upon me. I don't need the trivia, Bardock. I don't need it. It's okay. Yeah, I'd like to play them too. I just haven't done that yet, but I'd like to, I think. But 6 years later, that's when it happened. The investigation was going nowhere. There were no suspects even, just an ever-growing list of victims. Should I do it before Apollo Justice or after it? Before. The Miles Edgeworth games, I think they take place within the timeline of the original trilogy, but you might want to look up exactly where. Whereas Apollo Justice takes place after. And in the end, my brother became one of them. The last, in fact, before the case was finally resolved. I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zieks. Truly. Clint was always ready to put his life on the line for justice anyway, so he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He lost his life to the killer, but it was his victory in the end. For me personally, though, it was a great loss. I found myself in a very dark place indeed. When I finally found out the killer's identity, the reason why no one had been able to catch the man sooner ceased to be such a mystery. He'd been hiding in plain sight all the time. In plain sight? Are you aware of political events 10 years ago? It was a period of extremely sensitive diplomacy between the British and Japanese empires. A new treaty was being forged, I think. Correct. The Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation was being concluded. The leaders of both countries were deep in extensive political discussions. Which is why this particular killer's appearance in court was conducted as a closed trial. If the British public had known the identity of the killer, not only would the treaty have been in jeopardy, but our two nations could very well have ended up at war. Makes sense to me. What? A war between Britain and Japan? But that would mean... Oh my. You mean to say the professor was...
When the trial reached its conclusion earlier, I thought to myself, yes, it's time. Time for you to come face to face with this hideous monster. I borrowed the key for the mask from the proprietress of the Waxwork Museum. So see for yourselves now. Confirm it with your own eyes. The truth that's been hidden this past decade.
My voice for him is closer than I expected.
That's the professor? Yes, it's him.
Until now, the thought never even crossed my mind. That the mass murderer, whose crimes shook Britain as never before, was Japanese.
Wait a minute. That face. I feel as though I've seen it somewhere. Strangely familiar.
Father.
returned.
Well, how about that?
As he stood there before me. Ryunosuke.
Oh, it's not Ryunosuke.
Hello again. My friend.
Kazuma-sama!
Judicial Assistant Mikotoba.
It's been a very long road. Thank you. Thank you for guiding my friend here when I could not.
It was an honor.
I knew you wouldn't die that easily. Kazuma.
I owe you thanks too.
Ryunosuke instead of Ryan. Yeah, fine.
For taking good care of that in my absence.
Oh. Karma. Great blade of the Asogi clan. Passed down through the generations. When we left Japan, this sword was at my friend's side. The Japanese man's katana is his soul. He couldn't be parted from it. But then, when the incident happened, it was Susato-san's wish that I inherit this sword, and I've kept it with me ever since, along with my memories of the friendship we shared. With this by my side, I always felt that you were watching over me somehow.
I've made it. At last.
Father. Are you saying... Surely not. You mean... You knew all this time?
Bury and Barry are not pronounced the same, though.
I'm looking at it. But... I still can't believe it. This mass murderer is Kazuma's father.
Kazuma-sama.
Ryunosuke,
Ryunosuke.
we have much to talk about. But now is not the time.
Well, I have...
Seeing you.
That's all Kazuma said. Before he turned and left us there, in the courtroom.
It's not a corpse. It's a waxwork, by the way. Well, at least here in America, bury and bury are two different words. So I don't know why anyone would pronounce them the same. So he's the living after image of the man who took my brother's life, is he? Yes, Kazuma Asogi, my best friend. 3 months ago, when Lord Strongheart introduced us, I had an inkling there was something there, some connection. Why did Lord Strongheart do that? Why did he make Kazuma Lord Venzix's apprentice? And when he was suffering amnesia, too. The man was apprehended, even executed, but his legacy just won't die. That's the sad truth. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you for meeting with me as I asked. "10 years ago, my grandmother took me to the railway station. We were there to meet my father from the train. For me, it was the first time I'd ever seen him." Poor Susano-san. All this is tied up with painful memories for her, too. She's never talked about this with me before, though. It took time to adjust to having father around, but just when I was starting to get used to it, he called me into his study one day. He told me that a great friend of his had passed away in London. Yeah, that's sort of how people move in the Ace Attorney games. They just kind of fade and then pop up somewhere else. It's not technically what they do, actually, like, in-universe, but it looks like it to us. He told me that a great friend of his had passed away in London, and that the friend had left behind a son. A boy, 7 years my senior. Father told me the boy had made a promise to his late father, so he was studying to become a defense lawyer. I wanted to help, so I studied to become a qualified judicial assistant. As I'm sure you've worked out, that young man's name was Kazuma Asagi. So you see, that's how he and I met.
For a brief moment, my great friend had returned, only to disappear again all too soon. But in that fleeting encounter, something stirred. Something that had been dormant for a long time. As if great wheels had been set in motion. I could almost hear them creaking into life. In some ways, it was the end of a chapter, but in many, it was the start of a new one.
Okay. There we go. Went a little past when we usually are, but I mean when we usually end, I mean. But yeah, thank you to everyone who wasn't here, Bardock in particular, of course, and thank you for your patience with the being disconnected and reconnected stuff. I would like to figure that out, hopefully, but we'll see. Yeah. Yeah. That's that. Is this the end of the game? No. There's more to come. There'll be many more weeks of this game on Thursday, so don't you worry about that. We're on episode 4, as you can see, and there's 5, I think? I think 5, maybe 6. But I think 5. Anyways, yeah. So, have a wonderful evening, and I will see you all on Saturday for Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. This should be fun. Toodles!